landscape. And I saw that these buildings are the repository of all the histories, the post-colonial histories and the colonial histories. And I saw tremendous potentiality. So I felt the need to broaden my canvas and deal with mystery, history, psychology, and supernatural
Wow.
and human mind at the same level, because supernatural and human mind is very, very close relationship.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ukiyoto Author Podcast series From Pages to Podium, where every author's stories find its true voice. I'm your host, Shankhalita Roy, and today we are joined by Mandira Mazumder, an Indian author whose writing has traveled through crime fiction, women's fiction, and now the dark and atmospheric world of Gothic mystery. With a background in English literature and teaching, Mandira has always been fascinated by human nature, the hidden corners of the mind, the forces that shape our behavior, and the secrets that remain. Her latest novel, The Dark Mistress of Long's Mansion, takes us into the decaying corridors of a mysterious mansion in post colonial India, where the disappearance of Zira, a tribal woman who spent decades serving the family, leaves behind a haunting legacy of love, betrayal, exploitation, and revenge. But this is more than a ghost story. It asks us to confront the darker side of history, power, race, gender, human nature, and perhaps most importantly, it asks a fascinating question. If there can be a Mexican Gothic, why can't there be an Indian Gothic in English? So, Mandira, welcome to the podcast. It's wonderful to have you here.
It's wonderful to have you too. It's nice to meet again too. Yeah,
Yes,
nice to see a fresh face.
yes. So, how are you, first of all?
First of all, I'm fine. Physically, a bit of cough and cold. That's the seasonal thing. But
Oh,
otherwise, I'm okay. I'm fine.
so same here. I'm also with cough and cold, but let's begin with the first question. So, Mandira, since you have written crime fiction, women's fiction, and now you have written Gothic mystery, what drew you towards the darker and more atmospheric world of Gothic literature? And when did you realize that the Dark Mistress of Long's Mansion was the story you wanted to tell?
Yeah, I've always been uh, fascinated by the dark recesses of the human mind, as I told you, the hidden desires, the revenge, the kind of forbidden thoughts that we have in our unconscious mind, and also the sense of guilt, the unresolved history, the unresolved things in relationships that won't leave you. These are the things that always fascinated me even as a teenager child. When I was a teenager, these are the things that fascinated me. And I read a lot of Gothic fiction too. Count Dracula and Wuthering Heights is one of my favorite Gothic fiction. And then Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, it shows me how people wear a mask to hide their true selves. So these are the things that always, and also crime, the consequences of criminal activities. And it's not the criminal activity has been done, why it was done, under what circumstances it was done. And it is more about what lies beneath the surface, the mysteries of life that lie beneath the surface. That drove me into writing because I am a woman. So I began with women's fiction and also the resilience of the woman of the 80s and the 90s of my time when I was a child. And I used to look upon them as Shabana's, Miss Smita Patil. I used to look upon them as my Kiran Bedi.
Yeah.
These are the women I looked upon. So then I wrote about women's fiction on a serious note, and then I wrote about crime fiction, true crime in Tamil Nadu. It gives you the very vivid picture of Tamil Nadu's socio-political picture. And I got that idea from a 10 minutes clipping from BBC World, and I made it into a novel. And those were the realistic true crime story that I wrote, but I dealt with them realistically. But then I was searching for something more deeper. I wanted to go deeper. I wanted to delve deep into the mysteries of existence. And Gothic gave me the canvas. Gothic gave me the canvas when I visited Kalagura festival with my daughter. My daughter lives there. She's in Mumbai. And Mumbai is my favorite city for different, very varied reasons, or its mystery and history and its cosmopolitanism. So I visited the Kalagura festival and saw, while we had a walk on the ramparts row, I saw the old Gothic buildings and the column, and they were very well preserved, some of them. You know, the mullion windows and the arched, and those architecture that drew me. And as I saw those buildings, even by the seaside, I saw uh, as if a picture of Gothic landscape. And I saw that these buildings are the repository of all the histories, the post colonial histories, and the colonial histories. And I saw tremendous potentiality. So I felt the need to broaden my canvas and deal with mystery, history, psychology, and supernatural
Wow.
and human mind at the same level, because supernatural and human mind is very close relationship, because whatever haunts our mind is supernatural. So I decided that I will write a Gothic fiction. It would enable me. But then I thought these buildings and the ghosts in the building is not a very, it would be a very superficial kind of writing. So I chose, because whenever you think about India and Indian history, you think about the oppression, you think about the injustice that was done, the collective psyche, the trauma. And then I thought about a tribal woman from Kalahandi, from a marginalized section. She can come. What if she faces this kind of oppression in such a, in one of these buildings? She might be a servant working as a maid or a servant or whatever it is, a governess. Then I brought in Zira, and then the Gothic story started taking shape. I thought I chose the Gothic to tell Zira's history. I chose the Gothic because the Gothic setting, the mysterious setting of the Gothic world, to expose the history of the real Indians from the soil, the landscape, the real India, that is Kalahandi district. That is how I wanted to write about the Gothic novel and explore more into human mind.
Okay, so one thing I must say, that when I was researching about you and I learned about your book also, Withering Heights is the first thing that came to mind. Like it's like very similar to Withering Heights. So we are all like, I was obsessed, so obsessed with the novel that I was reading it. I was reading it and I was like not able to give up that book at that point of time. So
Please.
you describe your novel as an Indian Gothic in English. What makes The Dark Mistress of Long's Mansion original as a Gothic mystery? And what were you hoping to bring into the genre through its distinctively Indian setting and history?
I wanted to bring the Gothic voice, the Indian Gothic voice, into the Gothic novel fiction. What if I bring something which is rooted to the Indian soil and landscape? It was not an Indian story that I was telling just in English. No, I wanted to explore the Gothic language, the Gothic genre. I used the tropes, but I built it completely on I tried to capture the post-colonial time and of India. It came from the Indian soil. My novel is not about any Moor like Wuthering Heights, or my novel is not about any Yorkshire. My background is old Bombay, not even Mumbai, old Bombay,
My
and
God.
also it has tremendous Gothic potentiality, because India has its own treasure trove of, what should I say, the legends, the lores, the folklores, the history, the mystery. India has its own stories to tell, like you find in Tagore's The Hungry Stone. He has explored that Gothic there. And so India has its, though Tagore's story is completely different from mine. So I tried to Indianize the Gothic fiction. I tried to bring the soil of India, the people of India, the belief that are there in India, the post colonial oppression, prejudice, class difference, the racial difference that was there. I bought all of these because I'm writing, I am trying to create a Gothic atmosphere. Um, Using all these I'm using the Indian soil and the Indian cultural background, the social beliefs, the political beliefs, everything, the myths we believe in. Zira believed in certain myths, the speaking tree myth. And she came from that land of Kalahandi, and I wanted to bring her into Bombay in search for her destiny. And she came there in a cosmopolitan city when still the post colonial culture lingered, and Long's mansion becomes the repository of the shadows of the post colonial time history. So when Zira intrudes uh, into this picture, it becomes a, and she shocks the building in a way. She's a very strong character, lady character, and she shocks the building in a way, and she rattles the silence inside that they try to bury, and she tries to explore into the uh, dungeons and even the underground cells to understand the history of that house. Of course, she establishes a voice there. She fights her existence. She's among the alien people. So this is how you won't find such things in any of the Gothic novels in English. So my Indian Gothic voice is completely different from its very original story. And it all came to me when I visited the actual tribal area in Orissa.
Oh
And I
my
met
God.
my Zira's, yeah, I met my Zira's face there, and I decided I will make her an Oriya girl. I found that powerful face, doe-eyed but very keen and very sprightly and very powerful. So I imagine, what if I place her in my Gothic mansion? What if there is a cultural clash? What potential? What kind of experiences she would have? So this is how my Indian story. I lent an Indian color and I imbued it with that color, and I just the whole story is exudes the Indian flavor. So my Gothic story is very original. It talks about the oppression, the repression, the repressed, the burdens of memory. So it's a very different kind of a novel. I tried and I used the supernatural. It's not a ghost story. I use the ghost to create that kind of thrill, but the supernatural is intertwined with the harsh realities of history, the shadows of history that
Hmm.
haunt us, that haunt our memory.
Yeah, that's actually great because that's actually great. So English Gothic mysteries often have their own familiar landscape, traditions, and fears. What do you think separates the Dark Mistress of Long's Mansion from other English Gothic mysteries? And how does India change the way we experience fear, haunting, and the supernatural?
The psychology of Indian fear or Gothic fear is very different in my story. This is perhaps the first full fledged experiment I did. I don't know how far I'm successful. People are liking it, the book. It's being sold like anything. Now, of course, I try to bring in that the Gothic fear is the deep collective psyche of the Indian fear. If you think about the partition, the trauma of the partition, if you think about the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, if you think about how the marginalized section like Zira represents that in my novel, how what kind of experience, grueling experiences they went through.
Mm,
I also talked about, I am telling you, That is how my Gothic novel, and its background is Bombay. It's a crowded Bombay. It was not so crowded then. Sorry, today it is crowded. It's this humid climate. It's not Yorkshire. It's the humid climate, uh, or it's not the world of Dracula. It's the world where there is heat, humidity, mystery, myth, Gothic mansions, post colonial trauma, and there is the Indian collective psyche, the Indian trauma, the ordinary Indian people who were, how they were treated, and how their voices were not heard by history. History tried to erase that, but they came back in the shape of Zira. So I used the supernatural trope to bring about that kind. So my book is has nothing to do with the Gothic novels of Europe. I took their trope, lonely place. They use castle, I used mansion. They use a mansion of the landlords of the time. I use the mansion of the British viceroy or the British official. I used it, and where an Anglo Indian businessman lived. I brought Parsis into the picture who were leaving after post independence, they were leaving Bombay. I brought in the Parsis, I brought in the transformative time of India in 1947, and also I did drop a hint about how the brown sahibs, I'm not talking about the white sahibs, I'm talking about the brown sahibs. They ignored the marginalized people when the Congress government came. Jawaharlal Nehru, with his tall promises of,
Yeah.
it's a midnight stream and all that promise, it's a midnight's promise, but the promise was never kept. And Zira's influx had to come to Bombay for sustenance, and how they were exploited. So, if I talked about, I have not glamorized the white people, so I haven't glamorized the our
Brown people. Yes.
yes, our political people who also exploited the poor people. That is why they had to come and be exploited in their hand. So they were between the devil and the deep sea. So my Gothic fear is not just from the supernatural. Yes, supernatural is there because Zira's ghost, time and again, there is a presence of a ghost, you feel it, but there is also a parallel explanation, psychological explanation, that the people who were dying in the decaying mansion, they were having hallucination, they were hallucinating about ghost. So there is a parallel explanation there
Oh, that's
because their
interesting.
memory. Yes, they said no Netflix like they were. You will sometimes wonder: is it the real ghost of Zira, or it is her memory talking? The whole story is through the memory of Zira because she questions the injustice that was done to her. The mansion lived on. The mansion became not because ghost haunted the mansion. The mansion became a thing of fear because the mansion was silent. The mansion itself is a living, breathing history. It's a silent history which observes all the activities, evil activities of mankind. And it is the it is Zira who questions the injustice that was done to her. It is through her memory. It is the whole story is through the memories of Zira because the ghost is not as frightening as what happened to Zira and the people like her before she became a ghost. That human crime is more frightening. Human mind is more frightening. And that is why I just showed how the residents of who are dying and getting old, they were hallucinating, they had psychological trauma. What for? What haunted their mind? So it is a haunting of the mind too. The ghost is inside the mind. It is not under the bedpost, but inside the head.
Oh my God, that's really interesting.
That's another dimension Gothic novel enabled me to explore.
Oh wow. So your writing has always been interested in the darker recesses of the human mind. In this
Mhm.
novel, where do you think the real horror lies? Is the supernatural presence of Zira, or in the human minds and the secrets buried within the Long's mansion?
The secrets buried underneath the dust. the dust behind the curtains, in the dark corridors, the secrets of lashing, whiplash, the secrets of betrayal of Ziras, who served that just she provided unqualified service to the mansion, and it is not the Zira's ghost. Yes, Zira's ghost definitely her presence creates because her memory returns when you try to suppress someone's suffering, when you don't confront the sufferings. What happens? She returns as a ferocious figure, like a vengeance, like a fury. She haunts the castle, but she also haunts the deep mind of the people who live there, the depth of their mind, and she invades into their psyche, and she reminds them of the kind of injustice and the kind of things that happen buried. So I think human crime, human mind, or what human beings are capable of, if they are overwhelmed by emotions, I think that is more frightening than the presence of a ghost, the ghost of history.
Oh my God.
The
Oh,
ghost of history. The old things, don't they haunt you? A family secret,
yeah,
a family secret, a buried secret, a
yeah,
guilt that was not confronted,
yeah.
things that happened which was not confronted, and the things that happened, and we try to hide our shadowy self
Yes,
by wearing mask of civility.
yes,
Those are the things I try to bring out. That is more frightening. Sometimes you feel that Zira, she becomes a mirror to the horror that happened within that four walls of Long's mansion. She's like a mirror. She is reflecting a time, the post colonial time, the ghosts of the time. They come out, the buried ghosts of the time, they come out in my book.
that's really interesting actually, to be honest with you. And I'm like very curious about the book right now more than ever. So
Read my book.
after,
Read
yeah,
my,
I will. So
read my book.
yeah, definitely. So after writing a story filled with such love, guilt, revenge, injustice, and generational secrets, what do you hope readers carry with them after they close The Dark Mistress of Long's Mansion?
I hope they carry with them the unforgettable Zira and the likes of Zira who are marginalized. And I think India should be conscious from history. They should learn from history. It's not about a ghost story. It's not about, it's the presence of the injustice. They should reflect about the injustices, the kind of denial. Their voices were not heard. The unheard voices, people of India should listen to the unheard voices of the time, and they should learn history is never dead. It is always living. It brings us back the memories, and we can always realize where and how we can improve the situations in our present, because history is connected to our present.
Yes,
Much correct. It's not dates and what Maharajas did or Rajas did. It's about the people's history. It's about what happened during the time. So I tried to bring that through a storytelling method. I wanted to bring history alive through a storytelling method.
wow, that's great actually. So let's move to the rapid fire round, and you have to answer within one word. So let's begin. The supernatural or the human mind, which is more frightening?
Of course, human mind, but the supernatural helps in a way. I use it as a trope
Okay,
to bring out the horrors of the human mind.
that's great. So ghost stories or crime mysteries?
Ghost stories, because crime mysteries tell you who did it, how it was discovered, and ultimately the mystery is uncovered. But ghost stories has tremendous potential. It brings out the hidden domains of human mind, the ghosts of human mind.
That's great. So love or revenge?
Love, of course, because it outlives revenge. Zira's love outlives. She loved Neil Long with all her heart, and she never regretted it. She never regretted it. Though Neil Long, I won't say.
Okay.
There was the racial prejudice, gender bias she faced. Neil Long's wife to face that.
Yeah.
Both women. I've shown another woman, European, equally powerful. But I've shown that woman, but both of them. What was your question like?
I was asking only about love or revenge.
So love always outlasts.
Okay.
I
So
want my readers to remember that.
that's actually true. So if Long's mansion could speak, what would it say?
I've swallowed too much of the buried history. Let it come out.
Okay. Zira in one word.
Unforgettable, mysterious,
That's really,
unforgettable.
oh wow. So thank you so much, Mandira, for joining us and taking us
Thank
behind the shadows of the dark mysteries of Long's mansion. Listeners, if you enjoy gothic mysteries filled with secrets, love, betrayal, and revenge, you can purchase the Dark Mysteries of Long's Mansion on Amazon. Stay tuned for more conversations with Ukiyoto authors. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you so much, Mandira, for joining once again.
Thank you for this beautiful interaction. You are lovely, Chantal.
Thank you so much, Mandira.